scared.
Your tornado warning.
They had us about 30 to 40 minutes in the hallway, so we pretty much only had our phones or whatever we could carry with us. And then they said, "Well,
everybody was okay."
Oh yes, thank goodness. It was just.
You ready to go live?
Absolutely.
You're in Florida, right? You're in Florida, Amelia?
Yes.
Florida? Yeah. We get our tornado warnings up here in Quebec.
Oh my goodness, it was.
Yeah.
Was that where you're at?
Yeah, that's where I am. And we've never had those before. And now with the weather changing, apparently we're in a corridor here of intense storms in the summer, and we get tornado warnings now. And we've had a few hit.
Yeah, so, they said it was near the beach, but luckily it didn't hit us. So
okay, let's do it.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of What's the Buzz Popcast. You heard me right. What's the Buzz Popcast. We are the only popcast in the world. Why? Because we own the name, and we can do it. Damn it! Right, yeah.
Absolutely, we can do it.
How you doing, kid? How was your day?
It's good, other than the tornado warning I was telling you earlier that we had, but we went.
Yeah, I heard that you were when we spoke today. Amelia was being evacuated from her office and held captive in the hallway.
Yeah, thank goodness it was just a small 20 of us, so it wasn't that big, but we had a nice structured cement building. It's an old building, so when they built it back in the day, thank goodness it was a strong cement building.
You guys made through it okay, and you're no worse for wear. We have an amazing show tonight. Tonight's show, The Satan Gene, with its author, D.W. Eamer. Dan Eamer is my guest tonight. He has written not just a novel and not just an epic novel. He's written a big old fat epic novel.
Right.
And this, I will tell you that Amelia and I were talking about this.
If we're going to do it, let's do this right, huh?
Right.
Exactly, yes.
I got my copy.
Yes.
This book is remarkable in a couple of senses. It reminds me, it's very visual, by the way. It's a very visual book, and I want to tell everybody a little bit about it. I'm not going to give away any info. No. It's a very visual book that reminds you of The Seventh Seal meets Dan Brown's Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, that works for me.
Right?
It's classic. It's classic conspiracy. It's got your religious elements. It's got your the seedier side of religion elements, which, let's be honest about it, it's all fucking seedy. Okay, so
government.
Yeah, we're gonna have a show. We're actually dedicating an entire show to that.
Oh, absolutely.
But it is a healthy book for a guy who just, I'm tell you what, when Dan Eamer decides to jump into something, he don't do it half-assed. This is an amazing accomplishment. We're going to talk about this at length in just a moment, but let me first introduce you to my guest. D.W. Dan Eamer achieved a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science from Concordia University in Montreal, leading to a career as a personal trainer. Boy, did you take a fork in the road.
Oh, big time.
His writing career stems from a life that was created at the age of 16. He had a life list. Listen to this one, Amelia. At 16, he created a life list. Okay. He wrote this thing as kind of like this opus to my life, things I want to do, right? So writing a novel was near the top of that list of over 100 goals. My little birdie told me perhaps as much as 120 goals on this list. Okay. we have a really, really keen birdie around here, Dan. So he tells us stuff. Dan Eamer's list has been lost to time and history, but it was never forgotten, as witnessed by this little puppy right here. Columbia, oh man, it's a great use of paper. It's an amazing book. After publishing fitness manuals, I can't believe this. He went from fitness manuals to this incredible work. He dug into a real novel. His first thriller, The Satan Gene, was custom made for conspiracy nuts like Amelia and I. And by the way, just so you know, Dan, we love a good conspiracy on this show, and we delve into them regularly.
Absolutely, we did.
Interwoven with secret codes, Catholic intrigue. Interwoven with secret codes. Amelia, let me get through this. As I gotta introduce my guest. Interwoven with secret codes, Catholic intrigue, and tantalizing blends of fact and fiction. We're going to talk about that. The Satan Gene will leave its readers wondering whether what they've just read was real, a grand illusion, or the figment of a great writer's imagination. With that, I am proud as hell to announce, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dan D.W. Eamer.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Eamer.
That's all right.
Dan, this is what happens, brother, when the coffee kicks.
He gets excited with these kind of
I am excited because I have to tell you, I really do. I want to tell you, all joking aside, this is an amazing book.
Thank you.
It's one of those books.
Great compliment, really.
That will easily.
We love this.
Yeah, it's one of those books that will easily captivate. And I say it's a large book, but it's a very, very easy read. In that, once you start, you don't want to put it down.
No.
I mean, I'm already
it's an easy read on two levels because it's easy from the story perspective, but it's easy because the print is a good size. It's it's not small print. We toyed with that a little bit, and I said, you know what, I want people to be able to read this thing. So that's the reason why it's a major brick.
I was going to ask you about that because it seemed to me like a very deliberate thing, enlarging the font.
Yeah.
So you know what? When I read a book, and I wear glasses, so when I read a book, I'm constantly doing this because, first of all, I hate bifocals and I am not going to buy them. So I just wear my glasses down like this when I read. And one of the things I found myself doing was, in reading the book was, and it's rare for me to sit up and read, but I just sat back in my chair and it was an easy read.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really is. The Satan Gene. Satan is an acronym for. Well, I'm not going to tell people, but it's an acronym. We're not. We are and are not talking about a literal Satan, but we're
exactly.
This is where the line between religiosity and fiction blur, and brilliantly so. It was absolutely brilliant. The historical fiction blended with current factual data and even historical factual data is remarkable. Or were you, Dan, a history student? Did you study like?
I'm a big fan of archaeology, a big fan of adventure stories and movies and books and stuff like that. And you mentioned Dan Brown earlier on. I became a big fan of his with his type of book. That really got me into it, pretty heavily. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of history and archaeology, and I love this stuff. So I wanted to integrate a lot of that into this book. The idea was to take a reader down along a trip of about 2,000 years, because we're stepping back a long way with some of this. So it spans 2,000 years, but the story is modern. The story is current. The story is actually current from the news perspective. If we're talking about what's going on with Russia and China, so there are very modern elements in it.
Yeah, it's a 2,000-year-old rabbit hole, brother, is what it is.
That's exactly what happened. That's
Yeah,
exactly
and
what
I'll
happened.
tell you what,
Mhm.
it was either a stroke of sheer extraterrestrial genius, or you got drunk one night and just started writing.
No,
Because I mean,
but,
it really is brilliant.
well,
Honestly,
I'll come back to that because it was quite a few years ago after I read the Da Vinci Code and then the subsequent books that he came out with. Between books, like I think a lot of people did, I was trying to find something along the same lines to keep me going, type of thing, because I really enjoyed the historical thriller type of genre. And so I was reading other authors and whatnot, but a lot of them left me a little bit, like blasé at the end, and even disappointed because the stories didn't end properly, or they were not well structured, or they weren't super well edited, and I had a lot of problems going. And at one point, I was sitting there going, you know what, I think I could do better than this. And then the idea was spawned from that moment on that I'm going to do it.
yeah.
You mentioned that it's a big book, and I took on a big job. Angela, I tried to eat an elephant. Okay, I really did. I didn't realize until I was fully into the whole process just how big a job it was.
Oh
There was
God, brother,
a
yeah.
tremendous, and I'm not exaggerating on this, a tremendous amount of research that had to be done. There was much more time researching than writing.
I
Okay.
have a question in that regard. Oh boy, did you lead open a Pandora's box of questions, Amelia? But jump right behind me.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I've
of
got a
course.
question in that regard. The historical element, the research element. I love to research. Amelia loves to research. We're people who like to dig. We like to find the backstory of every story, and extract from it, every morsel of protein. And man, I don't even know where to start with this question,
Right.
because it's one of those, like, God, I want to go here, I want to go there. So for you, for an author, first time like novel of this proportion, how important was it for you to A, get it accurate, and B, how much like daytime did you burn on this book? I mean, you had to sleep at some point. Although we established on Tuesday night with Alistair Cross and Tamara Thorne that writers are natural insomniacs.
Yeah, it happens.
I was going to ask
I'll,
you.
I'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea flashing through my head, and it's like, oh, okay, I got to write this down. So I send myself a text or whatever. But yeah, that does happen. It was part of the process.
Dan, we talked about that. Stephen King, in his first 5 or 6 books, he used to keep a recorder and a notepad by his bedside. So when you wake up in the middle, we just talked about this Tuesday night.
We did.
Honestly, because this is
I'm not going to record anything because I'll wake people up. She won't appreciate if I'm talking about that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's I can relate. I can relate.
So walk me down that path of research and how much to put, because you must have gone crazy deciding how much to put in, what to leave out. Was it as difficult to decide what to leave out? Okay, talk to me about that.
Yeah.
And then Amelia jump in.
That was almost painful. First of all, the research, I think, took me upwards of a little over 3 years. Cumulative.
Wow.
Okay, about 3 years of research. Along the way, you're writing stuff. But every time you get into the research, something comes out and you say, oh, God, I have to put that in. And then that sets you off on another path. And then you have to delve into the research for that. And then once you get that part done, well, then you start off on your other subject in your story. And all of a sudden, that research opens the door to other potential storylines. And it was becoming very big. It was very big. I mean, initially, what my goal was to try and tie together as many conspiracy theories as I could. And the funny thing is I was able to do it. And the scary part of it was able to do it. Okay, but I left out a couple of the biggies because I said, one, they were just overblown, and the JFK thing, I just decided not to put it in there because it was just like overdone. There's been enough written about that.
Yeah.
And the other one was 9/11, and that would require books on its own. So
yeah, oh boy,
big time. So I said, I'm not going to put those things in, but I tried to very superficially or in depth tie in as many conspiracy theories as I could into one novel. And the research was labor intensive. I'm a research guy.
Yeah.
Like we were talking before the podcast. It's not a first time book for me. This is number 2. The first 2 were brought out in the early 2010s. One was a weight loss book, and the other one was a natural bodybuilding book.
Yeah, I should tell people that before you wrote this novel, Dan used to publish health and fitness manuals.
Yeah,
and that was your background as you were a personal trainer.
I still am.
Oh, you still are?
Wow.
Yeah,
brother. We're going to talk after the show,
right?
All of this stuff.
I'm serious. I'm not even kidding.
That I lift one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not even. But yeah, I mean, this is. Give me another one, and I can do a weight program.
Yeah, you got both on this. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I got my teeth into those books, and they were actual successes in French.
Yeah.
The second publisher that it was proposed to, the first book, the weight loss one, they took it. They jumped on it right away, and I thought, well, wow, this must be a good omen, because I've heard horror stories of authors like Stephen King rejected 50, 100, 200 times before you get an acceptance letter, right? And this one, the only reason why the first one didn't accept it, they didn't have the budget to work with it, but the guy who was the lead, the owner of the first publishing company, was a pretty famous guy here, still is, and he accepted to write the foreword in the book. So in the end, 2 publishing companies, I got a foreword from a very famous person, and I also got a publishing contract. And in French, it was available in all the francophone countries, and it was a bestseller. It worked. So I said, okay, well, there's something there, but it was very lighthearted and whimsical in terms of the writing style. And after the second one, which was an extension of the first one, and by the way, they were written as stories. Okay, these are not manuals in a true sense. They are actual stories. You're reading a story about a personal trainer and his client talking about, how to lose weight, how to build muscle, whatever.
Right.
So they are basically novels touching on those subjects. But then when I got to the idea of doing the real novel, I said, and I said the real novel because for me, like I said, the other 2 were industry books. This one for me was like the one. I wanted to pull out all my stops on this, and to get back to your initial question about how much was it important for me to get the things right and all that stuff. Very important, very. And sometimes along the way you mix up some things or you mess up some things, and you don't get your research 100% right. I mean, at one point I was speaking about a Glock pistol, and I said, well, the guy released the safety. Well, I had a reader call me, get back to me and says, Glocks don't have safeties.
No, they don't.
I'm like, okay, I've never held a Glock before, so I wouldn't know something like that. So
I have one.
Okay. So there you go. Okay. So if you get to the point where he's talking about the guy holding the Glock, remember, just it was in there at one point that he had a safety. But the details are really important because I want the reader to get to the end of the book and just ask one question: could this be real? That's the essence.
Yeah, well, you heard me in my introduction. Right. That was the thing. Because it really does kind of suggest to you, is how much of this is fiction and how much is real, because it all sounds pretty legit, except for the parts that sound like, made up, BS.
Exactly.
Which even the made up BS sounds plausible.
Pretty good, right? Yeah.
Okay. And why would they be hiding a priest from being, when they die? Why would they hide wanting to get autopsy done?
Well,
why would that be the biggest thing?
Pursue that. Pursue that for a few minutes.
If they supposedly had a heart attack, how would we know that? Why were they wanting to hide that? And you're opening that door to people
question.
why.
Yeah.
You know, you're wanting to know the cause of death.
Yeah.
You know, right away.
That was basically the introduction of the main character.
Mm-hmm.
He was having a conversation with a priest about that particular event, which was Pope John Paul I,
Mm-hmm.
right, who was in office for what, 33 days?
Yes.
And then mysteriously, under great conditions, physical health and whatnot, all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah.
Why and all that stuff. So I thought it was a good conspiracy theory to throw in there to lead into the character who is basically a conspiracy theory, like fanatic.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was fun to put that in there as a lead in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the assistant, why would she have the Satan gene? Why would he trust her with it? What was so important for her to have it, of all
We
people?
didn't get to the end, right?
Right. So that's why I'm not telling anybody anything. That's why I'm not saying
one of those questions that I can't answer.
Exactly. So I'm getting people to see, read the book. You got to get the book to find out why.
Yeah.
So why was she interested in that?
Why do you do stuff like that?
To get people to buy the book, right? Am I good? Is that right? Get people to buy the book.
Now I want you to tell me.
I'm drinking
No,
water
you got to
now.
get people to buy the book, right? That's how you get people to buy the book.
Absolutely. Well, I mean,
Right.
that is the whole
Amazon.com.
idea. No, the idea is to sell books. Dan, let me talk to you about that.
Right.
We had Tuesday night, I mentioned earlier, we had Alistair Cross and Tamara Thorne. Alistair wrote a book called The Vampires of Crimson Cove. It's now going to be a 4-book series.
Yes.
I have the first 3 books. It was supposed to be a single book. But again, he didn't want to throw things away, so he created more books with it. There's at least, I can tell you, just because I'm only, like I said, up to chapter 57, just about this. I'm sorry, chapter 58, just about to start it. And I'm finishing up chapter 57 now. We talked about that earlier. One of the things that I see, even where I am now in the book, is sequel. I'm looking already to book number 2.
Yeah.
And apparently so are you.
I'll back you up a little bit, because you did ask something and I didn't answer it earlier. But the whittling away of information in the book had to be done, and I said it was heart-wrenching, because there was a lot of good stuff that was in there, but it didn't drive the story forward. And I decided, let's emotionally detach ourselves and become a real severe, like cold-hearted editor, and just rip out the stuff that you can't use. It's good stuff, but I can't use it. But I put it into the B file, the ideal file, because there was definitely more than one book being planned. Right now, I'm looking at the infrastructure for 3 others, and possibly a 4th one. When they will come out is when they'll come out. I have no clue, because the research part, like I said earlier, is very, very intense. And I can't rush the process. So,
oh God, no.
I envy those authors that are able to pull them out one a year. I'd love to do that.
I was going to say to you just a moment ago, is with almost 3 years worth of research, and then it took you another painstaking almost 2 years to write it. Yeah. So you've got 5 years of your life invested in this.
Yeah. It's part-time, like sideline stuff. I had fun with it. It really wasn't that difficult. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time writing it. It was a good experience. But I mean, when I had the brute, the big text ready, it was about 140,000 words, give or take. And I was looking at that. That's way too big. I mean, most novels, they run about, a thriller will run about 90,000 to 100,000, give or take 10, And I said, if any agent's going to look at this, they're going to say, yeah, forget it, buddy. It's just too big. So I had to whittle it down. So I brought it down to 104,000. So there was a lot of carving that went on, a lot of cut and remove. That was tough. But in the end, when I look at the final product, it was an absolute necessity, and I'm happy with how it turned out now.
Oh, I'm thrilled with how it turned out. As a reader, I'm ecstatic. The author, D.W. Eamer, wrote this amazing thriller. It's I called it at the beginning of the show, an epic. It is an epic for sure. He is my guest tonight. Amelia, questions for Dan Eamer?
Absolutely. And when you were actually doing your research, and I heard you had mentioned you had done a lot of research, and did a lot of the movies that you had watched before you had come through this, correct? You had wanted to make a lot of the stories a lot more better, a lot more.
Yeah, you're talking about if I
real.
use movies as
Yes.
a framework for
As
it,
a foundation to the book.
very much so. Okay. I like the way that like action movies cut and they drive the story
Yes.
forward, right? So the scenes in here, and I actually timed it because I can't remember what the number was, but I know people will read for about 45 minutes at a stretch, and I calculated for somebody who's an average reader how many words that would be. So I had an idea of how long each chapter should be if I want people to get to chapters. Now I had short ones that were sort of like, we go off and we come back to the story.
Yes.
But I made sure that I was in line with that thinking, that the chapters were not so long that you'd have to take 2 hours to read one chapter.
Right.
Okay? I wanted to have like movement. And at the end of almost every chapter, there's a bit of a lead into the next one. There's a bit of a teaser, and it's sort of like a page turner type of thing. Well, that's what I want to do. I really wanted that. So I think I crafted it well so that it came out that way. But the thing is, I also, in studying in the past, because I was always interested in movies and whatnot, and I kind of toyed with the idea of getting into the industry at some point along the way. I said it would be good to understand how a script is written, because that's the heart of any movie, right? So I started studying script writing. And that helped me tremendously with the rhythm and the timing of the novel. And I tell people it reads like a movie, and that was intentional.
Oh,
I've always said, Dan, that writing is a lot like music. There's a beat, there's a tempo, there's a rhythm to it. We've spoken about that. We've had a lot of authors on this show, a lot.
Oh, yes.
And we actually have a dedicated show called The Writer's Room, which I will definitely have you on.
And this is what we have is Writer's Room Week. And
yeah, this is Writer's
before the
Room
show,
Week.
I was reading, I was like, this. I was like, go to the lady.
Amelia introduced me to your book.
Yes.
She said, there's this guy, he's got this book. You might want to check it out a little bit. It's called The Satan Gene. I said, before I even said, okay, I said, book him. Find out who this guy is and get him on here.
And I looked at researched and I said, I found your email, and I said, we have.
I knew immediately it was going to be a thriller. It was going to be a conspiracy whodunit. It was going to be, the deep, dark recesses of the church and governments colliding or working in tandem, as it turns out to be most of the time. And so this kind of book is like right up our alley. We love, conspiracy books. Again, the book is The Satan Gene.
I'm excited.
It's author D.W. Dan Eamer is our guest tonight, and this is our first of the our second of the Writer's Room episodes this week. Amelia, questions for Dan Eamer.
And from what I understand, this is your first podcast
that
you've done? Really?
We're breaking them in good, too.
Yeah.
So this, as you were writing and everything like that, did any other ideas come into you? So I'm going to add this to it, even though it's probably not going to be a part of it, just to get more exciting to the chapter or to the two chapters that go together with that.
I can't say that really was anything that came into my mind. It was sort of like it was free form. It was free flowing. Like I said, at some point it was too much and I had to whittle it out, but everything was like mystery and action. And, there was a lot of forward movement that I wanted to create with the story. But I can't say that there was anything that was like, that I was racking my brain to try and make,
So no writer's block.
Writer's block I don't have.
Oh, good.
Why? You know what, Amelia? Thank you for saying that, and Dan, thank you for saying that you don't have. There are people, and in fact, Tuesday night I asked the question of two authors on the show. I said to them, "Is there such thing as writer's block? And if not, what is it?" And they came up with a very simple answer. It's laziness. A writer that doesn't want to write blames it on writer's block to be, to have that creative whatever the hell. But it's lazy is what it is. And maybe it's tired. You're tired. So you just, there's no writer's block. You just put it down for a little while and revisit it later.
You can't force the process.
No, you really. What happens when you try to?
Your bad stuff comes out. And you will write some bad stuff anyways. But it's in other moments when I'm sort of like toying with an idea that is not gelled yet. I'll put it aside and I'll go back to my previous stuff and I'll start looking through it, and then I start crafting it and playing with it, and then it goes from bad to really good. So the process is sort of like it's kind of hard to say the process, because I'm sort of like a hybrid between two. You've got the planner type that'll do the storyline and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And everything in detail, right? And then you got what they call the fly by the seat of your pants type.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a hybrid between both of them. But I definitely know what the beginning is going to be, and I'm crystal clear on how I want it to end, because I can tie the two together. The middle, I like to say, is the adventure. Okay, and the adventure is going to lead me sometimes in different directions that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
All right. But I definitely have that process. It's the beginning and the end is crystal clear. I know where I want to lead people, and I want it to be smart. I want it to be like surprising. I want it to be fun. So in the middle, whatever. And there are moments where I just I have a bit of a stumbling block with something, and all I do is I just say, you know what? I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it up into the universe, and I will move on to something else, and my answer will come to me at some point along the way. And it is unbelievable how that technique works well for me, because sometimes my answer comes while I'm watching a television program, or I'm looking at a science paper on a particular subject, and all of a sudden the answer just jumps right out at me.
Yeah.
So it's like the universe is working to help me create this thing. And there was a lot, I lost count of how many moments I had like that with this thing. It was unbelievable. It is now actually part of my process that some of this stuff, I just throw it out into space and I let it take care of it. So I don't have to worry about it. I worry about something else. I know the answer comes, and that has been one of the most liberating approaches to writing that I've discovered.
Dan, I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite aspects of writing: characters, character development. I have a background in television, radio. I've written 2 books, and I've done a couple of films.
You can interview yourself at some point, right?
Yes, sir. And so I am a big proponent of character development. What's your process, or your catharsis, as it were, for creating, developing, and breathing personality and life into a character? How do you, as an author, approach it?
Real life. I get inspired for, I've worked with tens of thousands of people over the years in my personal training, and you get to connect with a lot of personalities. You get to connect with a lot of heavy duty stories. Sometimes you get to connect with the human experience.
Yeah. So
I siphoned from all of that some stuff that I could put into my characters to give them some depth, because if you've got a superficial character or a one-dimensional character, you haven't got anything that people will get emotionally attached to and root for or be sad about if something bad happens to them. So I really wanted to put multiple layers into the characters so that people can identify with them. Yeah. And one of the things I did want to do, or didn't, depending on how you look at it, is I didn't want to make my main hero a former military expert, like a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret or anything like that. Because I thought that outside of an actual book like Gray Man, it was a good example of the Bournes series. Outside of that, it's very, because they are expected to have those kind of qualities and talents, right? But outside of that, I said, I'm dealing with the everyday person, and I want them to identify with the character, because I don't want the character to get out of a sticky situation just because they know how to pull out a walk.
Yeah.
I want them to get out of it more by their intelligence. And I also didn't want to have scenarios where they got out by accident or by sheer luck, or by sheer happenstance. Convenient stuff like that for me just throws it completely off. I disconnect from a book when I read something like that. So I wanted my characters to have depth. I wanted them to have emotions. I wanted them to have history. And I wanted them to be connectable, in the sense that anybody who reads it, the everyday man, everyday woman, will be able to identify with the characters, and you get into the story a little bit better at that point.
Dan, when you're using real life as a catharsis for a character, do you find yourself walking a tightrope, perhaps using too much of someone's persona in a character? No. Okay.
Because it's really a mix of so many people that you can't identify with the character. If there's no one character in that book that is anybody that I know who is modeled off of that, that person. Not one. They're all figments of my imagination, and I play around with them a bit there and get them set up so that they're not identifiable as any one person.
Amelia, questions for Dan Eamer?
Yeah, I love the way you had tied the Catholic with people, the Catholic religion, and then the government, and then everything tied like into one, make it look like I'm going to use, for example, you said the shadow people with the government, and then the Catholic religion, and had it all tied up into one, and then how they all work together into an unbad government, but then it all turns out into a good thing to help, like you said, your hero into the story, to help all of it, to help, I guess, the world basically not to destroy each other.
Right.
And of course, we'll find out later on in the book, because we're not going to give it away. But is that how you had it planned? Like you said, in the ending, you already had the ending before you had the beginning?
I knew what the ending was, yes. The Roman Catholic element came into play not too far into the original research, because it wasn't originally supposed to be with that team, but it kind of came into play quite often along the road, because the conspiracy theories being government based a lot.
Yes.
I realized that a lot of these new world order things are not just controlling from a government point of view, but they're controlling from a religious point of view as well. So I said, well, I think I can marry the two together and make both bad groups. Sounds
right.
weird.
Well, yeah, I understand what you mean.
Make both of those groups kind of like church and state are working on the ultimate goal of becoming the new world order, and the rest of us are the sheep.
Right. Yeah, because it seems like a lot of it's tied into the Catholic Church. A lot of it's more Catholic, and of course the government. And it seems like a lot of it's being tied together, and a lot of it's going to be like they're with the conspiracy, and a lot of it's tied together.
Oh, Amelia, the Catholic Church is a potpourri of conspiracy.
Oh,
Are
absolutely.
you kidding me?
And it's like the main
source of potential stories. Yes. And I'm not the first author to exploit that. Dan Brown being a pretty good example. You've got Steve Berry as well, who happens to be one of my favorite authors, who does stuff like that. His most recent one that he came out with is still, again, with the Catholic Church and other mysteries. So I'm not the last one. I'm not the first one. There's going to be more people exploiting that, but there's a rich source of information in there, I think, coupled with secret societies, coupled with government conspiracies, and God knows we have a lot of those floating around these days.
Oh boy!
So there's a lot of information to weave a very rich tapestry for a book of this nature. So I will be using the same approach for the next ones that'll be coming along at unknown dates. But
we look forward to that one.
Have you come up with
right now? I'd love to have it say, yeah, it's out now. The second one's out now, because I know the work that's waiting for me. So
Dan, have you come up with a process or a staging that works for you? Maybe you call it the Eamer effect. or writing classes
he
may
thought
call
of
it
a book
the
name.
Eamer effect. But I'll tell you what, I'm ready to start a college course right now on Dan Eamer. I'm going to call it the Eamer effect. That's yours for free, by the way. You can have that one, the Eamer effect. Seriously, though, let's talk about this book. There are a lot, and we're not going to give anything away. No. We're just talking about the book in general. Because I still haven't showed them the trailer yet. And we're going to show the trailer very shortly. This trailer, and I want people to keep in mind, what you're watching is a trailer for a book, for a novel.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, and I made it.
Yes.
Yeah, I made it.
And this, and it's a superb visual. I love the visual. You had a movie in mind when you made this, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's why I said the first thing I said out of my mouth in this interview. This is a movie here, okay?
Yes.
We just got to hook Dan up with the right people. This is a movie.
Absolutely, right? A movie in the making.
Oh man, you don't even know. We're going to be.
You never know. You never know.
We're going to be on the credits as consultants. I want to show people. No more mystery, no more suspense. Let's take a look at this. This is the trailer for The Satan Gene. Author is D.W. Eamer. Watch it now. That's the first book trailer I've ever seen longer than 30 seconds.
Really?
That runs, but for the people watching, that runs over a full minute.
Yeah, it's 1 minute and 7 seconds, I think.
Yeah,
something
it sure does. A remarkable piece of visual. Clearly you had
fun making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And clearly you had a movie in mind.
The music lends itself to that, right? It's very dramatic.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, yeah, and here's my question though: is a lot of people will sit down with pen and paper or computer, whatever their motive of writing is, and people still use typewriters, believe it or not. But when you write a book like this, and I want everybody to take a look at this. This is a really thick book. Do you sit down with a book like this with a visual in mind, or does the visual come later?
You're talking about the cover itself?
No, not necessarily the cover. I'm talking about the contents.
Oh, you mean the thickness of it?
No, I knew what the feeling was that I wanted to generate through the book.
I got you. Okay.
Okay, I knew what that was. And sometimes when I'm into some heavy duty stuff or heavy scenes, fight scenes or something diabolical is happening or whatever, I no joke, I put on some heavy dramatic movie music to get me into the mood. So I'm listening to this stuff in my head as I'm writing the scenes, and I'm playing the scene out as if it is in a movie. And now I've got the music playing in my ears to sort of like add like a velour to it, to round it out. So yeah, definitely it helps for my my writing process to have that kind of music playing in the background. Just give me that feeling of what it would look like, because the scenes play out in my mind like a movie, right? So
every effective book, every good book should leave the reader with that picture of action taking place,
like
not just words on a page. They should come to life in your mind like a film. So to me, a good book is like watching a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want it to end. That's why I know there's going to be a part 2 and maybe a 3 and 4.
Oh, definitely.
You'll get one.
Yeah, it's like being,
for sure.
being in the book yourself. It's like that's how I am right now. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the adventure with her. It's like when she's like
Well,
go,
Amelia, pursue that line.
you know, it's like when, you know, I'm not going to give away a part of it, but when she's getting ready to leave in the book, I should say, you know, she's trying to find a way to leave, you know, and she's having to go a different way. And of course, they're trying to track her. I'm going to say that part of it, but I know how her mind thinking, and I'm like, oh, go, hurry up, you know, like that part of it. I'm in the book with her, and you know, you were mentioning the cover. How did you come up with that cover? What was it?
I have to
love it.
I have to give credit to the guy who is the graphic artist, who Rudy is his name.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it right there. But he, what I gave him as an initial cover, he ran with it, and we ended up with, like, I think, 7 or 8 versions.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just like threw everything out, and he came to me with this one that you have right now. And with only a few minor tweaks, I was looking at it and I said, you know what, this is absolutely perfect. It has the feel of what the story is all about. You got 2 people running, so there's movement, and you know there's a chase, and you've got this like DNA strand behind them that is like huge and bearing down on them. And if you look at the shape of the DNA and the pyramid underneath, which is like the road or whatever, it looks like an hourglass, right? So it gives a sense that time is ticking on this.
Yes.
You know, and the seal, well, the seals is part of the 7 seals of justice. So we put a seal in there, but it's a big blood block as well. You know, it's like, so there's a lot of nuances in here. And then having the St. Peter's Square hidden behind the DNA sort of like gives the impression that they're behind this. So there were a lot of nuances in the cover, and when I saw it, I said, okay, you know what, let's run with this. This is absolutely perfect.
It's very intriguing, and that's when I saw that, and I told Angelo, I said, look at this book, Angelo.
Oh, God,
look at this. I said, Angelo, we have to get this guy on the show. Look.
Yeah, she was so excited. She said, look at this book. We have to get this guy.
I called him on the phone.
I didn't realize that. I thought, you know, honest to God, I'll be honest with you. I thought it was going to be maybe a couple of 100 pages, maybe 220 pages, 250. I thought it was going to be a small book. I didn't realize the extent of the research you put in. The historical research in this book is spot on. There's nothing in here that is contrived or made up. It's real.
It's big.
And that's why I said at the beginning of the show that a reader will read this book and ask themselves the question, is this real?
Yeah.
Is this the figment of a great writer's imagination? Is this contrived? Or is the whole thing BS?
Or is it fiction? No. Maybe he wants us to make it think it's fiction and it's really real? Who knows?
Well, but it's true. Think about it, too.
The fiction part of it is the story I made up. Okay. Yeah. And that is interwoven through historical fact, and you know, like, you know, you can do searches on this. And one of the things I wanted to have people do is actually get on the internet and check stuff out. You know, what I read, is that actually real? And then go on the internet and check it out, and then they find out that it is real. Like every building in there, every artwork, every destination that they go to, it reads like a tourist map to Rome. This thing. Okay, because you're not there yet, but you know you're going to be going over to Rome at some point.
Yeah,
and it's almost like a tourist map, and yeah, well, that's it. It was a lot of research to get it all put together. Yeah, that's it. It was a big deal.
Questions, Amelia?
Yeah, and Angela even says all the time, you can't make this stuff up. You can look it up in the
internet. I tell people every week, you can't make this shit up.
Yeah,
you look up most of this stuff in here, the documents, the destinations. You look this up; they are everything exists.
Yep.
I did a lot of virtual traveling through YouTube and whatnot because you know, you can do that now, and it's great for research. So I didn't have to go to a lot of these places to get the information, but I did a lot of virtual tours, a lot of them.
Have
So
you have you wanted to go to a lot of these places recently? Will you be going to a lot of these places?
I haven't been to Rome, so it's sort of like I'm working with what I researched on it, and the destinations over there were part of my research. I haven't been to Rome. I've been to Italy. I've been to Venice. So that part, if you read in that part, that I've been to. But I never got to Rome. So Rome is sort of like I'd love to go just to sort of like get into my character's world. Really, you know, like
And say, I've been right there where I wrote this part of the book.
yeah, exactly. So, but I actually had a reader send photos in. This is crazy. She went to Rome and she took a bunch of photos at certain sites that were critical or semi-critical to the story. She actually like sort of like went to where the story was, you know, leading her, and she actually got a photo inside of St. Peter's Basilica. Right at the heart, right over St. Peter's tomb.
Oh, geez.
And I was blown away because I said, "Oh, you're gutsy." With a title like Satan on it, and you're right in the middle of the Vatican, and you're putting it right there. I said, "Wow, that was a very, very gutsy move." So the book,
boy,
the book
gutsy. That's an understatement, brother.
It's been to Paris. It's been to Hawaii. It's been to Italy. It's been in Australia. It's been all over the place. So I get these photos of people sending.
Right now, your book is literally all over the world via the internet because we hit 314 radio stations. We are on literally every podcast platform on planet Earth.
Wow!
And we are proud to say that we are #1 in New Zealand. I can't make this shit up.
Yes.
Don't ask me why New Zealand.
Yeah, why New Zealand?
I have no idea. Other than there's a lot of Italians in New Zealand.
Yeah, maybe because I don't know. Your accent is not New Zealand at all. So
no, not at all.
No,
not at all. But our guy Jimmy Thunder from Down Under, he says you guys are #1 here, so enjoy it. Amelia,
good.
Yes.
I hate to do this, but we got to call it a night.
Oh,
this is killing me to do this.
I know, right?
I'm going to put it right out. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now. Dan, can you join us for a part 2, maybe a couple of weeks down the road?
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Beautiful. I got to have this.
Great. This is a great interview. I love it.
Oh,
this
look at I was just so glad.
Thank you so much. What an amazing first-time experience.
Thank you. I'm glad that we could break you in gently. Beautiful thing.
Oh, wait a minute. You're setting me up for part 2 now, right?
Uh-oh.
Before we say goodnight and goodbye to Dan, let's check this out one more. I love that trailer. I could play that again.
I made it, and I keep watching it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see it's remarkable. Get ready to watch the movie.
That's actually the crazy thing, is because I find myself sort of like, leafing through it once, and then I start reading, and I get caught up in my own damn book. I start reading my book, and I said, I've read this thing 1,000 times, and then I flip to a page and I start reading it, and I realize I've read 3 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you realize, Dan, that you've done a good job. When you can read your own work and enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely.
You've done a good job. I'm being very serious when I say
my dad has read it 3 times. My mom has read it 3 times too. I mean, it's dedicated to mom and dad. So, yeah.
I've written 2 books. I got family
Oh,
members that still don't even know I wrote one. You know,
I'm
2 of
still
them.
waiting for my copies.
You'll get it one of these days. You'll get it.
One of these days.
Amelia, tell everybody what. Oh, by the way, Dan, when we go off the air, stay with me for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Amelia, tell everybody what's coming up, kiddo.
Oh, absolutely. We have next week, actually, as we do our continuing turn to I guess I wouldn't say serial killers, I would say murders, I would say.
Unsolved
Basically.
murders, yeah,
Yeah.
mysteries, yep. Mhm.
Marilyn Monroe, we have we're gonna be doing another, I guess, I don't know if it's
Yeah, who killed
unsolved,
Marilyn
actually.
Monroe?
I would say unsolved, basically, because to me, it's
Mhm.
unsolved. Marilyn Monroe, and on the 15th, we're going to be doing it part 2 for Wrestling with the Future for
Yeah, we are going to
wrestling
revisit the
superstar
case of
Chris
Chris
Benoit.
Benoit, a former professional wrestler, Chris Benoit, who allegedly murdered his wife and son and then killed himself
But we believe that it was
in a
a
botched murder-suicide, but we're being given information now that,
it was
hold
all
on your brakes with the murder-suicide and maybe not so fast. Maybe it was a hit. Maybe it was a botched, hit gone terribly, terribly wrong.
correct by someone that they
We're
knew.
being told that it was supposed to only be Benoit that was killed. His wife and child were not supposed to be touched, is what we're being told. The sources that we have are very reliable, so I have no reason not to believe them. I will tell you this, though. If it turns out that it was a botched murder, boy, somebody got some explaining to do big time.
Yes. And we had a lot of suspects.
Oh boy, brother, it was a mess. This one was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Big, bad, and messy. It was horrible.
Absolutely.
We are also next week going to delve into what
The week
really
after.
happened to Marilyn Monroe. As Amelia said, was it the Kennedys? We think not. Perhaps something more sinister? Yeah. Deep, dark, and J. Edgar Hoover's name comes up a lot.
Yes,
A lot.
we think she was
apparently the Hoover
and
had
suicide.
bloody hands and didn't care who he took out. So we're going to explore the dark side of J. Edgar Hoover and the whole Maryland case. For Amelia Pitbull and for the Mad Dog. I feel like this is the dog pound every week.
And he complains about me having the paperwork.
The Pitbull and the Mad Dog.
You're
Why don't we just sign off by going,
who lets the dogs out? Yeah, exactly. Who lets
right?
the dogs out? Woo.
Yeah, right. For Dan D.W. Eamer, I am the Mad Dog. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right.
You don't get me in trouble.